Celtics fans, settle in, because tonight's game turned into one of those wild rides that only this team can deliver. What started as a showcase of everything Boston does at its highest level suddenly shifted into a reminder of how quickly things can unravel when the focus drops even a little. The night began with the energy you expect from a team trying to reestablish its identity, moving with urgency, communicating on defense, and jumping passing lanes like every possession meant something. And for a while, that urgency paid off. The Celtics were sharp, decisive, and aggressive, the kind of combination that usually becomes a problem for any opponent trying to keep up. Everything came together perfectly in that second quarter. It was the version of Boston that makes you think this team can beat anyone when it's fully locked in. They were flying around defensively, stacking deflections, and turning those disruptions into easy points on the other end. Even though the total number of turnovers forced wasn't outrageous, the efficiency was incredible. Every steal mattered. Every mistake by the opponent was immediately punished. 3 steals turned into 7 fast points, and the earlier defensive plays in the first quarter had already produced another set of scores. By halftime, Boston had squeezed a dozen points out of just 5 opponent turnovers, and that kind of opportunistic basketball is exactly what they've been searching for throughout the season. Then came the avalanche. The offense exploded for a massive 48-point quarter, one of those stretches where everything clicks, spacing looks perfect, and every player seems to understand the rhythm of the possession. When they hit 80 points before the break, it felt like something historic had just happened. And in fact it had, because reaching that number in a single half is something this franchise has only accomplished a handful of times. It looked like the game was already broken open. The lead ballooned past 20. The momentum was entirely green, and the confidence spread through the arena as if the rest of the night would be smooth sailing. But the Celtics have this frustrating knack for letting comfort drift into carelessness. The moment the third quarter started, you could sense a shift. The opponent, even without its starters and even without its main creators, suddenly found rhythm. Players who barely see the floor on a typical night started hitting shots with no hesitation. Defensive rotations that were crisp earlier in the game became half steps late. The team that had just put up one of the most dominant quarters of the season suddenly looked unsure, reactive instead of proactive. And all it takes is a few possessions like that for a lead to shrink faster than anyone expects. By the time the fourth quarter arrived, the full swing of the collapse was in motion. A team missing nearly its entire starting lineup was suddenly scoring at will, knocking down shots like it was a practice gym, while Boston struggled to generate the same composure it had displayed earlier. The opponent scored from outside, scored at the rim, scored off hustle plays, and the Celtics were stuck watching players who usually live deep on the bench stack points in bunches. It became this surreal moment where a lead that was once 26 points felt like it could disappear entirely. What made the situation even more alarming was how easily the opponent got comfortable. Wide open looks appeared everywhere. Drives to the rim came without resistance. Second chance opportunities kept piling up because the Celtics lost track of rebound positioning. Earlier in the game, every missed shot by the opponent sparked a fast break. Now, every miss seemed to bounce right back into their hands. The shots that Boston had been knocking down with confidence suddenly began to rim out, and defensive possessions that once felt secure now looked disconnected. The concerning part wasn't just the scoring surge or the defensive lapses, but the mentality shift that became obvious. As soon as the game felt secure, some players drifted away from the game plan. Instead of continuing to move the ball, maintain structure, and attack with purpose, possession started turning into individual hunts for shots, as if players were trying to pad their own numbers. The rhythm that had defined the dominant second quarter was completely gone, replaced by rushed decisions, isolation attempts, and defensive breakdowns that opened the door for the opponent to climb all the way back. That tendency has become one of the Celtics' biggest problems this season. If they're not playing with near-perfect discipline, their margin for error disappears. Any shortcut, any slow rotation, any forced shot becomes a spark for a run on the other side. And once the door opens, even the most unlikely group of players can walk right through it and turn the game upside down. The fourth quarter turned into exactly that. A flood of points from players who normally sit at the end of the bench pushed the Celtics to the edge of what could have been a humiliating collapse. The offense stalled at the worst possible time. Three-point attempts that had been falling earlier stopped dropping. Transition opportunities dried up. The opponent, meanwhile, kept stacking buckets, kept pushing the pace, and kept believing with every possession that the comeback was possible. And the numbers told the story clearly. The Celtics, who once looked so dominant, were suddenly giving up another 40-point period, something that has happened far too often lately. It was the kind of thing that makes the coaching staff pull at their hair, because every one of those defensive lapses was preventable. What saved the night from becoming a disaster was the presence of a closer. One player refused to let the game slip away, stabilizing the offense when everything around him felt shaky. Possession after possession, he stepped into the moment, hit tough shots, attacked the paint, and kept the team afloat when the lead was vanishing. Without that response, the outcome would have been much uglier, because the opponent had all the momentum, all the confidence, and absolutely nothing to lose as the gap tightened to a dangerous single-digit margin. And even though the Celtics escaped with the win, the second half exposed all the issues that continue to haunt this roster. The inconsistency, the tendency to relax, the breakdowns in communication, the struggles to maintain the same defensive intensity from start to finish. The night showcased the best of what this team can be and the worst of what keeps holding them back. And all of that sets the stage for what comes next, because the lessons from this game will need to be addressed by every player in the rotation, from the stars all the way down to those who are fighting for minutes. And as the game moved into its final stretch, Celtics fans found themselves caught in that familiar mix of frustration and disbelief that seems to appear exactly when the team should be closing the door with authority. What had started as a display of dominance slowly morphed into one of those tense sequences where every possession feels heavier than it should, every defensive rotation arrives a fraction too late, and every missed opportunity begins to echo louder inside the building. It wasn't just that the opponent was hitting unexpected shots. It was the feeling that Boston had loosened its grip on the game, giving life to a matchup that should have been buried long before the fourth quarter even began. That shift in body language, the slight hesitation in transition, the softness in defensive stance, all of it combined into a momentum swing that the other side was more than happy to ride until the very last minute. What made the situation even more puzzling was how clearly superior Boston had been earlier. The contrast between the fluid, confident version of the Celtics from the second quarter and the passive, reactive version that emerged later was jarring. The ball that once moved freely suddenly stuck in certain hands. Drives that previously collapsed the defense became mid-range pull-ups taken too early in the shot clock. Defensive rotations that were sharp and connected suddenly felt disjointed, like each player was waiting for the next to take responsibility. It was as if the team slipped out of the rhythm that had carried them so effortlessly before halftime and found itself scrambling to regain control of a game that never should have spiraled this way in the first place. Even the crowd, which had been electric during Boston's explosive run, fell into that uneasy silence that only occurs when everyone senses the same thing. The door has been left open, and the opponent charged right through it. Players who had spent most of the night quiet suddenly gained confidence as Boston allowed them enough breathing room to take chances. Difficult shots started falling. Loose balls bounced the wrong direction. Calls that the Celtics usually force with aggressiveness weren't coming because the intensity wasn't the same. It was a strange atmosphere, the kind that makes you wonder if a team mentally checked out too early, assuming the job was already done. That's the danger of easing off against a group that has nothing to lose. They start believing. They start pushing. And Boston, instead of stepping on the gas again, seemed stuck between wanting to slow the game down and waiting for someone else to step up and calm things down. It was around this point that the small details began to matter more than ever. A missed box out here, a late closeout there, a careless entry pass that led to free points the other way. Those are the moments that transform control into chaos, especially when the opponent senses weakness. And tonight, every one of those mistakes felt magnified. The Celtics still had the talent advantage, the size advantage, the experience advantage, But none of that counts when focus disappears. What should have been a routine finish became a tightrope walk. One of those endings where each trip down the court holds the potential to either restore order or complete a collapse. Meanwhile, frustration grew visibly inside the team. You could see players looking around, trying to figure out how they had allowed the game to slip from a blowout into a nail-biter. The adjustments that felt automatic earlier were suddenly harder to find. Instead of attacking mismatches consistently, the Celtics drifted into possessions driven by isolation, hoping individual talent alone would be enough to push the lead back where it belonged. That approach works when energy is high and spacing is sharp, but when tension creeps in, the offense can grow stagnant quickly. Shots that dropped with ease in the first half rimmed out in the second. Drives that once created wide-open kickouts led to contested layups or turnovers. And every missed opportunity amplified the pressure. Defensively, the team tried to regain the edge it had shown, but reaction time wasn't the same. The rotations that had generated steals earlier were now half steps too late. The opponent recognized that hesitation and kept pushing the tempo, forcing Boston to defend longer possessions and react more than dictate. Even when the Celtics forced misses, securing the rebound became an issue. Those second-chance plays not only kept the other team in the game, but also chipped away at Boston's confidence. Still, even in the chaos, there were flashes of what this team truly is. A few possessions where the ball zipped around the perimeter again, a perfectly timed block that reminded everyone of the defensive ceiling, a transition burst that reignited the arena's energy. It was enough to show that the Celtics hadn't collapsed completely. They were just caught battling their own inconsistency. The talent was there, the blueprint was there, but the commitment wavered. And in the NBA, that's all it takes for a comfortable win to turn into a stressful finish. As the clock wound down, every glance at the scoreboard carried a sense of disbelief. How had a night that started with such overwhelming dominance devolved into this? The answer wasn't found in any single play. It was the accumulation of subtle lapses, the kind that don't show up dramatically in highlights, but shape the entire narrative of a game. The Celtics had spent the first half building a masterpiece of rhythm, tempo, effort, and execution. Then, almost without warning, they drifted away from the very identity that created that masterpiece. And once a team pulls back from its own standard, regaining that level of sharpness mid-game becomes a challenge. One Boston is still learning to overcome. The finish, tense as it was, served as yet another reminder of the broader truth surrounding this season. The Celtics have the potential to dominate anyone, on any night, for long stretches at a time. But potential without consistency can turn comfort into crisis at any moment. And tonight's game was the latest illustration of that ongoing battle within the team. The push and pull between brilliance and complacency, between control and chaos, between the Celtics they are and the Celtics they still need to become. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Explosive rumors are rocking Boston as whispers swirl around Joe Mazzulla and his fiery declarations. Sources close to the team claim that Mazzulla, whose coaching style has been under the microscope for months, reportedly lashed out in a heated confrontation, leaving insiders stunned. The word on the street is that he didn't hold back. According to multiple murmurs from locker room insiders, Mazzulla allegedly made it clear that he is done with the Celtics. While the team has yet to release any official statement, the intensity of these whispers has fans and analysts buzzing with speculation. Mazzulla, who has been at the helm during a roller coaster season, is known for his unfiltered approach and emotional transparency, and if these claims hold any weight, the Celtics locker room could be on the verge of a seismic shakeup. Observers suggest that tensions may have been simmering beneath the surface for some time, with disagreements over strategy, player rotations, and management decisions reportedly adding fuel to the fire. Some insiders hint that the confrontation may have been the tipping point, a moment when patience finally ran out. The NBA community is abuzz with theories. Could this be a prelude to a high-profile departure? or merely a temporary eruption of frustration from a coach who thrives on intensity. Fans have taken to social media, dissecting every press conference and sideline gesture, searching for hidden signs of discontent. Analysts speculate that the ripple effects of Mazzulla's statement could extend beyond the Celtics, influencing trade talks, free agency plans, and even the broader landscape of coaching shifts across the league. While the full story remains shrouded in mystery, one thing is clear. The Celtics franchise may be at the center of one of the most talked-about locker room dramas in recent memory. As whispers turn to headlines, the NBA world watches eagerly, wondering whether Mazzulla's reported declaration is a prelude to a dramatic exit, or simply the latest chapter in the unpredictable saga of professional basketball's most passionate figures. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Boston Celtics, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.